Hey everyone, how are you doing? My name is Ellen. I am the co-executive director of Hollywood Fringe, and I'm just going to go in with a few announcements before we get started tonight. It's so awesome to see all of your virtual faces. Please start using that chat. Roddy and Lois will be monitoring it throughout this event. We also have 5 amazing panelists that I will introduce in a bit. Before we get started, I want to start with a land acknowledgement. The Hollywood Fringe acknowledges that we are on the unceded lands of the Tongva, Quiche, Gabrielinos, and Gabrielinos peoples. Our statement serves as a practice as we commit to furthering our connection to the Indigenous communities, past, present, and emerging. If you'd like to learn more, you can go to hollywoodfringe.org/land and be able to look up the land that you are currently residing on. My name is Ellen. I forgot my pronouns are she, they, and a quick visual description. I am a white woman. I have dark brown hair with bangs. I'm wearing a blue shirt and I have a white background. That's for anybody who's joining in and can't see the show so that they can join in on the experience. Today is all about Ed Fringe, an incredible beast of a festival. Today's panel will be honest about the pitfalls, the must-dos, but remember that your experience is going to be your own. With 500 plus venue spaces and thousands of shows that are performing daily, your experience is going to be unique, unforgettable, and something to be proud of. I also want to say that today is really about demystifying the differences between Hollywood Fringe and Edinburgh Fringe, and being able to speak about some of the differences it is to tour to a fringe that is outside of your own neighborhood, and kind of talk to some of that touring experience that the folks on the panel have. Before I get into that, I do want to wrap up some Hollywood Fringe stuff because a lot of our folks on this call today just finished the festival with us. And I want to say Please, we need your feedback. Hollywood Fringe this year was a great year. We will be having our post-Fringe town hall, which you should come to if you want to learn anything about how this Fringe went. We're going to start the town hall by giving some stats as to how this festival went, as well as kind of narrowing in on some feedback. It'll be Monday, July 22nd from 7 to 9 at the Mealy Arts. And it'll be a beautiful live open feedback space. We usually have beautiful conversation that leads to better and better festivals every year. Roddy's also going to be dropping the link for our artist and audience surveys for feedback. This is where you can anonymously let us know about your Fringe experience. Was it a smash hit? Are there some things that we should change? Let us know there. Lastly, let's chat about this Edinburgh program. Lois and I have been going to Edinburgh for a few years, and we've seen the lack of support for US-based artists bring their work to Edinburgh Fringe each year. And we've started to see some of the gaps that we could fill as an organization that was going. And so this is the start of some of that deeper programming, and we're going to be asking a lot of feedback along the way because we've never done this before, and we want to know how helpful it is for you and be able to serve our artist base as we go through. So we'll be doing things like this panel. We're doing an artist mixer for artists going to Edinburgh on Wednesday, July 27th, or sorry, Wednesday, July 17th from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. in Central Hollywood at the Broadwater Plunge. It's just a chance for artists who are going to Ed Fringe in 2024 in Los Angeles to create community together, show up, and we'll do the rest. We'll have some talking points. We'll be able to have people there that can answer some questions for you. And it's just going to be a great way for you to build community before making that trip over. In Edinburgh, we're providing some soft on the ground support with a couple of mixers as well as a late night in Hollywood cabaret. So our two mixers. One is on Sunday, August 4th. And that'll be artist focused. Meet your fellow artists and work together on creating those marketing plans together in person, in the flesh, in Edinburgh. And that will be at Summer Hall. And then the second is going to be Monday, August 19th. That is going to be an artist and industry mixer. This is going to be a space where you can meet different industry members who come to Edinburgh Fringe that we have relationships with to maybe have them come see your show, learn about further touring opportunities, and be able to mix and mingle. I will slow down. Thank you, Erica. I will slow down. Third, we have that late night in Hollywood cabaret on August 22nd. That will be 10 featured artists who get to be featured in a curated cabaret, a late night in Hollywood. So if you've done a show at Hollywood Fringe before and you would like to be featured in that, please submit. If you haven't done Hollywood Fringe before, but you're from the US, you are also welcome to submit. We just are putting priority towards Hollywood Fringe artists. Okay, I'm going to drop a blog in the chat, or what Roddy is, which is going to have all of this information in a clickable format, because I know that I just said a lot of things at you. And so don't worry, you'll also be able to read deeper into those things. And if you have any questions about it towards the end of this panel, we will be doing a lot of Q&A. So before we get started, by throwing it over to our panelists, I want to launch a little poll in Zoom to tailor our questions to fit your needs. So I'm going to launch the poll right now. Give me 1 second. Launch. So the first question is going to be what category of artist best fits you? And this will help us learn how many of us are going to Ed Fringe this year versus like aren't, and if you have experience at Ed Fringe versus not having experience. And then the second is going to be what sort of topics are you interested in learning more about tonight? Is it about like what's happening on the ground, marketing, finances, getting started? What are the things that are kind of in your quickest in your mind? And it's got a blank space for you to be able to tell us that. Please think of like 1 to 2 word answers, not long sentences. I'm going to give you guys 2 minutes to start answering that. Should have thought of some like waiting music, Roddy and Lois. But if I hum some, I might get our stream taken down. So I'm just gonna sit in silence. I'm gonna give us about 1 more minute on this. Gonna give us about 30 seconds. Ten seconds to wrap up that last thought. Boom. Okay, I'm going to share the results. So most people are a producer at this year's festival and have not done it before, which is great. That's what we're focusing on. For my folks that are not going this year, this will be useful for you, but I am going to make sure that we don't focus on that experience as much because we will have another panel in the fall where we're going to be able to have people who can better explain that onboarding process, deciding on venues, that kind of thing. I think we're going to focus more on the festival experience at this panel, but feel free to ask those questions towards the end if they're burning. And when it comes to what people want to hear about, it's going to be, marketing, PR. Marketing is everywhere. Finances, common pitfalls to avoid as a first timer, do's and don'ts while there, get some inside scoop as what to expect. How do we get people to see our shows? How's it different from Hollywood Fringe? Living expenses, how to sell tickets, how can we get people over there? What to expect? Daily plans for flyering. So we're going to get into all of that. I'm going to now introduce our incredible panel. Actually, I'm going to make them introduce themselves really quickly for our panelists. I'm going to spotlight you and put you on the spot. So if you could put your video on. Once I spotlight you, if you could give your name, your pronouns, your visual description, and a little bit of info on how long you've been doing Edinburgh Fringe and your experience at Edinburgh Fringe. Oh my goodness, if I can find any of you. Katie Rose, you're going first.
Hi, everyone. Wait, it's telling me I have to unmute myself. Okay, can you hear me? Okay, cool. Hi, I'm Katie Rose Donahue Enriquez, and she, her, and I'm a white woman with brown hair, and I'm sitting in a room with French windows. They seem beautiful, but they've been eaten through by termites. Don't be fooled. I live in Hollywood. I've gone to the Edinburgh Fringe before as a self-produced solo artist, and I'm going this year with Stacey Burrows, who I think is on the Zoom right now. So she could be of use as well because we met in Edinburgh Fringe in 2022, and this year we're going back. I've directed her show this year called Laughable. So she's returning to a venue she's been to before called Greenside. When I was there before, I was at a venue called Paradise Green, if anyone's wants to hear about that experience. And yeah, I don't remember what else I'm supposed to say.
You did it all.
Thank you for having me.
I'm going to grab Chris next.
Oh, I see. It just says that. Oh, hi, I'm Chris. My pronouns are he, him. I'm going to my 11th Fringe. I have produced my own solo show. This is my second year. I've produced three other shows that I did not appear in, and then I've performed as an improviser since 2012 in a couple of shows that run there. My show this year is at Assembly Studio 5, which is where I was last year. It's an 87-seat theater near George Square. I think that's about it.
Awesome. Griffin.
Hi, I am. Oh, am I still muted? Nope. Okay. Hi, I'm Griffin Kelly, she, her. I am also a white woman with brown hair, and I am wearing a white shirt, and I'm in front of a very busy wall with some bunch of shit hanging on it. I last year was my first Edinburgh Fringe with my show Two Cats on a Date. It was a solo show that I co-wrote and co-produced and starred in. I was at Zoo Playground, and it was the best month of my life, and I love to talk about it. So, and I did Hollywood Fringe last year for the first time as well.
Laha, you want to go next?
Sure. I'm Michael Blaha, he, him. I'm a white guy with salt and pepper hair, mostly salt, I think, at this point. I'm wearing a blue t-shirt. In fact, I'm wearing the Hollywood Fringe t-shirt right now in honor. My background is basically a hotel room's curtains, so nothing to see there. I have been producing shows at the Edinburgh Fringe for 24 years, probably at about 120 shows now. Joyful, who's on the panel with us, was one of our artists last year, and this year Gene, who is over here on the left, at least on my screen, is also working with us. So it's exciting to see some other friends, and I've seen Chris over the years and Katie Rose, etc. In the event, as a result of just the sheer volume of shows I've produced at most of the major venues there, Assembly, Gilded, Pleasance, The Space, Underbelly, you name it. We also do a little bit of free fringe, but not in the more traditional free fringe like Laughing Horse, but more and actually free fringe is kind of a misnomer these days because post-pandemic there's more ticketing for it than there used to be. But we have some music shows. So I have 12 shows this year, including Gene's, and 6 of those are music shows, like tribute acts to Roy Orbison, Lady Gaga, etc. And then the others are dramas, our actual theater pieces. So happy to be here and answer any questions anyone might have.
Joyful. Last but certainly not least.
Hi, everyone. My name is Joyful. I am another white woman with brown hair. And I am in front of, I have a green shirt on and gold earrings. I wish they were real gold. And I have some photos behind me and the sunlight coming in through the right. I went to I did the Hollywood Fringe with my show Breed or Bust in 2022, and then I went to Edinburgh for the first time in 2023, produced by Michael Blaha. I was at the Gilded Balloon Patterhouse, and I also was with also brought a show last year that I directed, Abby's Box, which was at Greenside. So I got a peripheral view of that experience, and I've been doing fringes for quite a few years now, and I also have a lot to say. So I'm happy to be here and happy to answer your questions.
Okay. So this is really going to all come from an artist perspective. There's all of these incredible resources online that I'm sure we're going to share throughout this event that can build this idea for you, this experience of what you're going to be going through this summer. But it's so much easier when you have folks who are in the room with you. You're able to ask the questions that are burning. So I wanted to mention that the first, 40 minutes from here are going to be questions that we've prepared. And then after that, it's going to be an hour of Q&A so that folks can be able to really ask some of those burning questions, especially folks who are going to be going to the festival this year and kind of fill in some of the gaps that our questions might have for you. Okay. So it's really a time for you to be with some artists who have done it well, who have, made some big swings, and we're going to be able to learn from those swings. Our first question is, what's Ed Fringe like? It's super different from Hollywood Fringe. What are some of those basic things that you might not think of? If you've only done Hollywood Fringe as kind of like a perspective. And yeah, I think we should just kind of start there. There's a million ways. So I'm going to throw it over to anyone who wants to go. Katie Rose, go ahead.
I want to say Edinburgh Fringe is the largest arts festival in the world, and it's the 3rd largest ticketed event in the world. So number 1 is the Olympics, and number 2 is the World Cup, and number 3 is the Edinburgh Fringe. It's massive. So in comparison to the Hollywood Fringe, it's a totally different beast. There's an extra 1 million people that come into the small town of Edinburgh for the month. And the Festival Fringe, which is the thing we're talking about, is only one of the festivals that's going on. So there's multiple festivals also happening at the same time. There's a dance festival, there's a book festival, there's a film festival, there's the original international festival, which is what the Fringe was born from because they were being too exclusive. And so the Festival Fringe was born. Yeah, so it's crazy. It's all day long, every day. There are shows 24/7. There are thousands of venues and thousands upon thousands of shows to see. So yeah, that's kind of an overview.
Joyful, I saw a hand.
I have a habit of doing this when I'm just, but I'll go. I was like saying wow to everything she just said. I concur. I was not prepared for the mass scale of the thing. It's like being in Times Square when you're down in Old Town where it's like, sometimes you can't even move. Like it's just so, there's so much coming at you at all times. Like with the Hollywood Fringe, you can track, you kind of have a sense of all the shows. Like there's just no possible way for a human brain to track all of the shows. Like I actually brought this for you guys to see like the, the amount of shows there are. So yeah, I have more to say. I wasn't really prepared, but that just to reiterate what Katie Rose said about the scale of the thing. And it's not centralized. There's no like there is the Fringe Center, but it's like an animal with like 20 million heads. So like don't look for the center. Like there is no center in my opinion. It's like find your smaller communities, your smaller centers, but I found there to be, if you try to track it, it will make you lose your mind.
Griffin.
Yeah, I will say also the experience of like doing the Fringe itself is you're doing a show every day. For most artists that go, you're doing a show every day with maybe one day off. Some people take one day off a week, but I think most artists take a single day off, like right in the middle of the run. And that's ends up being like 23 shows in a row. And that's kind of a different experience and can be really taxing on your mental and physical health. And yeah, that was what I wanted to tack on.
Yeah, it is. Even it is so exhausting on the artists. Chris, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest difference between Edinburgh and Hollywood is that Edinburgh is more commercial. Um, I think there's an undertone of like, it's so expensive to go. You have to get people in to see your show. Like Hollywood has a sort of warm culture of, hey, go to Fringe Central and meet the other artists and give them your cards and we'll all go see each other's shows. That model is not really sustainable for Edinburgh. Um, First of all, lots of people will have a pass where they can come see your show for free. And then it's great that you made that community, but you also are paying $3,000 or £4,000 for your flat. It to me, it's very much an exercise. It's almost like a marketing Shark Tank or something, where it's like, okay, you're competing with 3,500 shows for brain space, and how can you make your show stand out? And I mean, you don't have to, but like, I would say to get anywhere close to like financially solvent, you have to get regular people to come see your show. People that are on holiday to come see theater, or so there is an element of meeting a bunch of other great artists and being exposed to all sorts of genres and types of theater and comedy and drama that you've never seen. But then there's also a part where it's like, how can you tell your story to just a person on the street to get them to come see your show?
Yeah, totally. Michael Blaha, you want to close us
Yeah, I
out?
mean, I'll certainly endorse everything that everyone said. It's 10 times the size of the Hollywood Fringe, just in terms of the number of shows. Um, it can be very daunting. And because there's so many shows and there's so much competition for audience, it can be tough to get people in. It can be daunting to do a show where there's only two people in the audience, and that happens. I neglected to mention I actually have performed there twice as well. And there was one day where I sold 0 tickets. And so I went ahead and ran the show anyway, just for practice. But yeah, it was dispiriting. And then I wound up selling out the last show. So who knows? But the fact is, it can be incredibly mentally challenging to an artist, especially if you had success in the Hollywood Fringe or any other festival, because it's just the dynamics of the Hollywood Fringe, as Chris pointed out, everyone's supporting each other. A lot of times the audience is made up of other artists, not entirely, but some of the audience is other artists and stuff, and they're all supporting. There isn't that much of that, as Chris mentioned, in Edinburgh, because of the sheer size of it. You might get that within each venue up to a point. but yeah, it's just you really got to keep a good mental attitude because if it's a good show, and hopefully all of our shows are good, we certainly all think they are. We typically wouldn't be spending time and resources trying to perform them and produce them. You just got to trust your own show, and sometimes for whatever reason the audience just won't get there, and the zeitgeist is not in your favor that week. Then something else could change, and all of a sudden people, the word has gotten out finally, and people start showing up. So I don't mean to be negative at all. It's an amazing experience. I have been doing it all this time for a reason. But it can be, yeah, it can be sort of mentally challenging. If you're used to having a big success and you get there and all of a sudden you're struggling to sell tickets for a few days just because there's 3,500 other people selling tickets as well. So just keep the faith. And there's been plenty of times where a show started out slow and then found its legs and did very well. So
True, true.
I also think everybody will have to define sort of what a successful festival is for them as well. And it is probably Michael and I be the most like sort of our tone might be a little harsher about it, just because it's like because I think we've seen a lot of people go with very high expectations about what was going to happen, and you can tell people at the beginning of the month, hey, like, if you get 10 people to see your show, that's great. Like, if you're from America and you don't have a following there and you get 10 people in your first weekend, that's something you can build on. I will say it really functions off word of mouth. So if you can get in the first 10 days people to talk about your show, it really does bloom into like more people coming to see the show. I think maybe even more than like Hollywood Fringe, because you're at the same time every day. It's really easy for someone to tell someone else like how to see your show if they really believe in it. But yeah, I think there's we can talk more about it, but I definitely think there's an element of managing what your expectations are going in. And unfortunately, because there's so many shows and also so many people around you are just doing really well, it is really, really hard not to compare yourself to other shows the whole month. Like it's almost impossible to not be in the artist bar with somebody else who just got 5 stars from the Telegraph or something, and they've had to add extra shows, and you're like, why am I not? But they're like they're coming from a completely different uh journey than yours.
100%. 1,000%. I think that we always talk about at Hollywood Fringe, like you need to pick those things, the reasons that you do it. And I'd love to kind of talk about the reasons that people do Ed Fringe and like what people can expect to get out of it so that they can have more realistic expectations going in. So if you like, what are some goals that you've been able to make happen at Ed Fringe, or some things that you've set as your own goals when doing the festival? Anybody have that?
I wanted to add just a couple. I wanted to add that the one difference, and then I'll answer your question, is that like I found flyering at the Ed Fringe versus Hollywood Fringe like completely different beasts. Like flyering actually brings people in the door. Like the audience is equally as overwhelmed as you, because they're like, how the hell am I going to pick between these 3,800 shows? So when they meet, even if you hire people to do your flyering, which I recommend you do, but I also think you really should do your own flyering, because people are like, oh, it's your show. Oh, cool. You're the artist. And like, I swear to God, like 75% of the people I actually had human contact with came to the show. And I have a really good line that I want to offer to you all, because people are receiving millions of flyers a day. And I asked two things. I asked the audience, do you do the Fringe? I asked the people, because not everyone's doing it. And they'll just be like, no, no, no. And then I asked, and it's kind of cheesy, but it really worked. I said, do I have consent to give you a flyer? And people kind of laugh, and then they have an out, and then you have this funny little, and then like, or do I have consent to tell you about my show? Like, because people are inundated. And then I would just say, like, pick your people that you flyer to. Like, don't just, I didn't find it very useful. Just like, come to my show, come to my show. I would like zone and be like, oh, they look like my people. And then I'd sort of have a chat with them and like, bring your personality. So I'll answer the other question, or pass it off to other people. I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, that is 100% correct. And what Chris said earlier about it being a word of mouth festival, there are two things that sell tickets in Edinburgh more than anything else, and that is word of mouth and personal flyering. Making that connection with the audience is absolutely, and sometimes for a lot of reasons, people, artists don't flyer themselves for, they're just not in that space mentally. They need to prepare for their show differently, whatever. That's understandable. I mean, that's happened where we don't get the artist out there flyering because of their own reasons. But when they do, it's pretty magical sometimes. And I've heard so many stories like Joyful just related, like, oh, I flyered that family from Minnesota and then all 6 of them came to my show. And there's nothing like it. Also, I wanted to add, especially since I felt I was being negative, and I don't mean to be at all. We had a show last year that was suffering terribly for audience. It just wasn't selling. And it was a good venue too, and a good time slot. And it just, people were staying away from it. But it wound up winning a major award at the end because a critic saw it literally like the day before it ended, and it wound up winning one of the top festival awards. So I'm just saying, just it's a marathon, not a sprint. And if you just keep your head down, you know your show's good. I mean, all of you, we know you've got a good product, and you have confidence in your ability to perform it, and that's, just stay with that.
I think we can talk about marketing and goal setting. I think like those types of things, I think kind of go hand in hand. And so if anybody has some thoughts on marketing, flyering, those big, huge posters in the meadows or in the middle of town, what are the things that have worked for you? And then also throughout this, if we can just talk about goal setting and like how you've goal set for Fringe.
I can talk about flyers themselves. Like obviously the flyering itself was important, but we had a lot of success because of the flyers we made. My director and co-creator Shozo Okada was like kind of the mastermind behind this, but our flyers were, yes, flyers are the postcards. They're the things, the physical things that you're handing out to people on the street, or like setting stacks of them in venue spaces where people are going to be like going through a lot. And our flyers were really thick and like high quality, so they were more expensive, but people told us they like held on to them because they felt bad throwing them away because clearly like spent a lot of money on it. And they were like bright orange, they were super noticeable, and oh, thank you. Yes, they were everywhere. Oh, we had some people say they came to see the show because they saw our flyer on the ground, like someone had dropped it, and they just like saw it on the ground and it like caught their eye, and then they were like, well, we're not seeing anything right now, so we're gonna go see it. And another thing to stop people from throwing it away, flyer near a trash can, because there are gonna be trash cans like so many cadences along the street, and if there's one near you that they're going to walk past, they're not going to throw your flyer away in front of you. That's more time they'll have with it to like give it a look before they throw it in the garbage. And yeah, I would say like you don't want them to be too busy, just the important information, something that can be gleaned easily just by like looking, like title, time, location, and then like a snippet about the show, just like really the briefer the better to really hit home with people. I don't know, I think of it a lot like social media type things where you want to like hook people's attention immediately, get the point across as quickly as you can before they have a chance to swipe away from it.
I love it.
I think it takes a little bit of like chutzpah or whatever, but if you can flyer people in more like captive situations, like when they're all sitting in the beer garden and they're like looking at the book trying to figure out what to do, it is very daunting because they have this energy of like, it's the 4 of us, we're like at our table with our beers, we don't want to be bothered, and you just have to like get in there and say like, hey, can I tell you about my show? And it's really, really like, I hate doing it, but a lot of times when you do that, they seem very hostile, and then you talk to them and they're like, oh, okay, great. like it's just the demeanor you think they have. And then depending on what your venue is and what the sort of rules are, I think it's great to flyer big queues where people are going into shows. Especially like if like the venue above mine will have a big queue that goes like 150 people deep. And so and they know where my venue is. I'm like, my venue is literally right below this one. The different venues have rules about like where you can flyer, whether you can flyer someone else's area, whatever. I also think a lot of that is just do what you want until someone tells you not to. That's what I think. I know that you're supposed to get like permission to flyer in certain areas, but like just do what you have to do.
Sorry, I'm American. Oh no. No, I'm just kidding. But I think it is, I think let's talk about bold moves like that. And I don't specifically mean ones that are not recommended by venues, or we're not saying, hey, go do illegal things. But what are some bold moves that you've seen people make that have landed? And just some like kind of like inspiration points that for you even.
I'll go. I was in a venue that the first year I did the Edinburgh Fringe, I didn't know anything about it, and I was self-producing, and I had applied to a bunch of venues, and I got an offer from one that had been around for 26 years, 27 years. And I got to the city, and nobody had heard of my venue. And I was in like a very strange spot. So actually on my flyer, I ended up printing a map with like icons and arrows and everything. And that helped. You know, if I could go back and do it again, maybe I would have taken the offer from Underbelly, but I didn't know. So I ended up at this venue, Paradise Green, and I flyered on TikTok live streaming. So that year they didn't have an app. And so it was really hard to get people to say like shows near me, which is something on the app. And so there wasn't really any way to do it other than run the streets. And I always flyered in character. I thought that was very helpful for me. My show was set in Philadelphia, so I would just wear an Eagles jersey and walk up to people and go, oh, hey, what shows are you going to? And this and that. And then they had this like tie-in with TikTok, which was kind of bullshit, but I was like, I'll do whatever you tell me to do. And so I was flyering live streaming. And so people wouldn't be rude to me a lot of times because there was a camera right there. So that was good. But also like I would get like 10, 12,000 people like watching the stream. That does not equal ticket sales, but like it was interesting if someone's there. I'm like, hey, look, 12,000 people are watching right now. You're going to come, right? Like, I don't know, just guilting people. Getting them to engage with the character. And if you made them laugh, then that worked. The other thing I will say is that like we were talking about goals, and I know that we kind of breezed over it, but I do think it's important to know what you want to get out of your Fringe and like to really sit down and think about it. There are some people who are like, I want to sell 1 million tickets to my show. I just want as many people as possible to see it. I think there's people who are like, I'm not as into that as I am an award. I want to win an award, or I want to be reviewed. I want to get stars. I want to get 5 stars. I want to sell my show as a television series, whatever it is, like to get very, very clear for yourself. That doesn't mean it's necessarily going to happen, but to know what your goals are going in. And sometimes it can be just, I get to be an artist for a month and do the thing that I'm here to do and have a good time and meet fellow artists and be inspired. But I think it is important to have that goal. And I think I've derailed myself on my thought process now. So I'm going to stop.
We always tell people to choose 2 goals and none more, and 2 simple goals when you're doing any festival, because I think it's so, you'll be like, I want to sell a TV show. It's like, what are all the steps that it takes to get to selling a TV show? There's 30 million steps that you have to go before there. And what are the 2 steps that you can take towards that near festival experience? Is it getting a better press presence? Is it getting a better social media following? Following. Ugh. Sorry, I'm also eating my dinner while I'm doing this panel. So if you are noticing me eating, it's because we are all still recovering from Fringe last week. Oh my God. It's felt like a year already. And so if I hiccup or something, I'm so sorry. So let's pivot a little bit. We've been talking a little bit about marketing. We've been talking about stuff. Let's talk about money. How have you made your money back? Has it been doing stuff in Edinburgh? Has it been like crowdfunding? When is ideal times to be doing that kind of outreach? Is it too late? I don't think so. The festival's not till August. What are these things that people can start doing now to make sure that they're making their experience the most affordable possible? Is it saving in certain areas? Like some people are like, I saved in this way or that kind of thing. So let's talk money and we'll get deeper in. I'll ask some more specific questions, but is there any burning money kind of thoughts, especially around saving financially?
I now Michael's going to show all his Excel files from the last 24 years.
Yeah, they're all going to show that the biggest problem by far is accommodation costs. I mean, those have skyrocketed. In fact, earlier in the call, when Chris said he had a flat for 4,000 pounds, I was going to like, where? Tell me, I'll take it, because it's really difficult to even get a 1-bedroom flat anymore for 4,000. So that's probably the number one cost, and the way to save on that is sharing. You know, get a bigger place and share it. We've got, I think Jean is staying with some other artists in a larger flat with us, and so she was able to cut the accommodations cost down. Student housing, if it depends on what your needs are. I mean, some people are okay with couch surfing and can just basically crash on somebody's floor for the month, which is probably not great if you're performing though, because you need a little bit of space and rest, and it would not be a great idea for you to be like constantly worrying about where you're going to sleep that night. But student housing is okay. There's some student housing in Edinburgh, and honestly, it honestly means it's geographically related as well. I mean, basically, if you don't mind taking a bus in, the bus system in Edinburgh is great. But then again, you may not want to have to take a bus anywhere at 11 o'clock at night for all kinds of reasons. And so, but if you don't mind staying outside of the city center, you can save considerably. There are accommodations that are half-hour bus ride away that are like very reasonable. But you're there for the festival, and to be that far away, and then you want to socialize after your show. What if you have a late night show to begin with? That's all, makes that much more difficult. The accommodations are the number one cost in our budgets typically. We don't get into the airfare. The artists deal with the airfare themselves, so we don't typically get into that. But that's fairly static from wherever you're coming from. And then the marketing costs, because we honestly look, all the major venues have a press office, and they just have so many shows. You can't really rely on them. I mean, they'll try. I mean, they'll be positive and helpful, etc. But Gilded Balloon has 100 shows, so it's just a practical thing that press person or persons aren't going to be able to spend the time. So we really strongly recommend that you retain a publicist. And that person's not going to be dedicated just to you. There's no way, otherwise they'd have to charge you 25,000 pounds. But we have somebody that we really trust, and so we're using David again, as we have for the last few years. And I think it's really important. If again, part of your goal setting is reviews important to you, because honestly, if you don't care about getting a review there, well, then having a press officer, a PR person isn't nearly as important, really, because that's their main function. Generally speaking, I mean, they do some pre-festival features and stuff, but we've had front page features in the Scotsman and haven't shifted a single ticket. The pre-festival publicity is nice and it's encouraging and all that, but it doesn't seem to really sell tickets. It's the reviews and word of mouth, and again, as I mentioned, the flyering, personal flyering, but marketing is very expensive. I mean, the posters and flyers actually aren't that expensive. Out of Hand, that company that puts them up all over the city, they have an exclusive. So if you want your posters on the streets, you have to go through Out of Hand. That's just the law there, basically. And that, it's a few £100 to put posters up, but we really believe in that, especially if you have a striking image. I mean, I guess that's true of marketing generally. Joyful had a great image last year when we were working with her 2 years ago. Jean's got a great image this year. I think just that alone out on the street is going to catch people's eye. And it's all about impressions. If you know advertising, it's all about impressions, how many times somebody sees that image. And so that's why it's really important to keep the image consistent across the brand, not to sound too corporate, but you know,
Yeah.
if you've used one artwork image for your entry and a different one for your poster and a different one from your for your flyer, that's not a good idea. You want people to recognize that image as your show. And so out of hand is important, and the posters basically that the venue wants, and then the flyering.
I think that's so true, especially like that branding. I think about Griffin, your orange color, and like when I see that orange color, I kind of think about Griffin now. Or when I see that pink color that Bonnie He uses for her terrible show, I always think about Bonnie now. And I think that people can really start to kind of build their brands around those small images, but also having like consistent colors that you use. I think that can be something that you forget to do, as not only is it your flyer, but it's also like all of the other branding that you do across your social media or across whatever platforms you end up using, your website, your project page, that kind of stuff. We're also going to go over like housing and like travel and like our like other call in the fall, where we're going to talk more about those DIYs. So I'd love to dig back in because we brought up PR. For those who haven't answered yet, did you hire a PR agency, and how important was PR to your run at Fringe? And if you didn't, like if anything around the PR, how you got articles. I know Griffin, you got a few articles, and Chris, and that kind of stuff.
I hired a PR person named Bex Colwell. She's been there for a long time. She sort of got grandfathered into me because she was the the publicist for Baby Wants Candy, which is the improv group that I'm in. So I sort of got to hire her. And so she's sort of like sunsetting her business, like she's not really taking on new people. But it was pretty important. Um, I about halfway through the run got a good Guardian review, which we were just sort of tipping over into like selling well, and then the Guardian review came out, and it sold very well after that. And then also other people then came to review it. Like it was like there's a very much like a pack mentality in Fringe, where if somebody decides that your show has value, you know, separate from your own value, you know, like if you get extrinsic value from someone else, then they're like, oh, I guess we should see this. So then suddenly somebody will respond to an email that didn't at the beginning of the month. By the way, I just want to say I I'm shocked that y'all spend hundreds of dollars on your outdoor posters, because I just looked up my budget. Because when Ellen asked like, how do you make your money back? I'm like, oh, I don't think I make my money back. I'm not sure that's priority, at least for me. So I'll just let y'all know that I have spent thousands of dollars on my outdoor posters this year, which I did last year, but I amped it up because of the thing Michael's talking about in terms of impressions. I almost feel like it's not worth buying just like 3 posters. If you're only going to buy 3 posters, you should buy 0. In my opinion, because there are so many times, even when I'm walking around, where it's like, oh, now I've seen that poster the 7th time. I guess now I'm going to look it up in the app and maybe I'll go. But for PR for the reviews, I think is important, because then you can also start, when you hand out a flyer in the second half of the month and it's got that little piece of copy paper printed and you've stapled on like, oh, we just got a 4-star review or a 5-star review. That I think that does mean that you get the flyer and it's got a little extra thing on it that's like, ooh, they just got reviewed. I think that's, and you kind of only get those reviews unless you have the PR.
Let's keep sticking with PR, and then let's go back to posters because I do want to talk about that again. But Griffin, did you use PR for?
We did not use PR. I think I don't know, this might not be true for everybody, but it seems to me like what you don't spend in like PR, you have to make up in like labor. Which is what we did. We just did so much flyering, like very strategic. And as far as like reviews go, like I think they can help drive ticket sales, but so much of the festival is kind of a crapshoot, where like there was someone at our venue who got the Fringe First Award, which is like huge deal. And I saw her show the day after she got it, and like was in the Scotsman and like all the papers and everything. And I was one of maybe 6 people in her audience. Like it's shocking what, like, things happen and you expect certain outcomes and then they don't always shake out like that. And you can have a reviewer come see your show. Like we had, I think the Independent saw our show on a night where we had a full house and a standing ovation, and it was like one of our best shows and we were feeling so good about it. And then we got a 3-star review. And they were like, yeah, it was a mid experience. And we were like, yeah, it's hard to predict what the outcome
Yeah.
is going to be.
Go
No,
ahead.
I will add to that. My first year as a performer, I got a 4-star review in the Scotsman, and I think I had fewer people the next day. It did not move the needle at all. I was kind of bummed because I thought, I didn't expect to sell out necessarily, but I thought I was going to sell some more tickets from it, and it just didn't happen. And of course, people want reviews other than just to sell tickets in August, of course, because we have many, many clients who got that elusive 5-star review in Edinburgh, and it is still on their poster 10 years later, and they're touring with it now. And so I think people get additional gigs out of reviews that they might get from Edinburgh, especially if they're one of the major papers, the Scotsman or the Times or whatever. But those reviews are gold if you intend to tour the show further, because it's I mean, we don't really use the star system here in the States, obviously, but people know, a 5-star review. They know that is like pretty much the top of the line, and you can trade, in those reviews forever, the life of the show, basically. They're permanent. So I think that's one of the goals some people might have if they have an intention to sell the show onward or tour the show onward, for sure.
Well,
But
also again, in the world of things I'm not sure are ethical or not ethical, but I didn't know. So basically, I did a solo show last year that's its own entity. It's its own storyline. It was not stand up. And then I was making the posters for this year, and my publicist was like, "Oh yeah, you just put 4 stars, The Guardian, The Telegraph, blah blah, on this year's poster." And I'm like, "That was for last year's show." And she's like, "It's fine." I was like, "Okay, well, it's on my poster now." I think because her perspective is that I'm presenting myself as like sort of a quasi theater stand-up. So, and she was like, "Everybody does it." And I was like, "Well, okay." I don't know if it's right, but
everybody does it, and I don't even have it. I'd like to think I'm an ethical producer, and I don't have any problems with that at all. When it's a solo, it would be different if it was a play and you were, putting reviews on for a different play that you had with 6 other people 10 years ago. But when it's a solo act, and you are also, you're known as a, like you said, you're a hybrid between performer and actor and comedian in your Edinburgh reputation, I think, for sure. I don't have any problem with that at all, because it's just you. It's a review for Chris. It's not a review for the show, really. But I understand your point. It's good of you to have
I should
any
run all my
quandaries.
ethical quandaries with Michael.
Well, I'm not. I don't write the ethicist for the New York Times, but I do read it.
That's a new thing, is that we all have to have our ethics warrior to be able to call and be like, is this fine? So I want to talk about, but let's keep talking about budget and marketing. I'd love if we could talk about like a good marketing budget and how much you were kind of spending in that. Just specifically, like, how much did you spend it and where did you spend it, and would you do that again?
I put my actual numbers into the chat that
Yeah.
I've spent on posters this year.
And I want to concur that unless you have a following in in the UK, or you have a freakish like event, like I second what Griffin said, that it's so mercurial, this festival. Like there was a girl in my theater who, like, she cried on Twitter the day after her show and said, I only have one person in my audience. Some comedian picked her up, and then she was like sold out the rest of the run because everybody felt sorry for her. And then she was like a phenomenon. Everybody was talking about her. So it's totally mercurial. What sells tickets? So like keep your showbiz desire, like, and your heart and your worth desire, like, separated. I think selling out, unless one of those things happens for you, or making your money back, is not a realistic goal at this festival. This is, that's just me. I know some people that made money. I know people that go back every year and like do like like really marketable shows like that people know, but I personally would prepare yourself to lose money. And then like to concur, yes, with Michael about like my goal was to get reviews, and like my lofty goals were like everything that we all want as performers, right? But like potentially your payoff might not be at the Fringe. Like I think I did well at the Fringe, and I'm putting quotes around that because that shit is hard and it was a slog. But I got really good reviews, and now I got into a theater I've been trying to get into for years because it like ups your it's like a there so just maybe the payoff is next year, like Michael said. Maybe the payoff is 6 months later. The payoff, just be prepared to like be really realistic with yourself and dream big at the same time. So
Well, and the payoff is doing the show for 23 shows, as Griffin was saying, or 24, or however many it is. I mean, you're honing the show for the future as well, or honing your personal skills as a performer. So there's that can't be discounted. I don't know if that's a goal or a result, but it's certainly something that's a worthwhile end product of doing the festival. I mean, by the end
I
of that
think that should
festival,
be I think that should be one of the major goals because you do the show 26 times. Um, you will level up your ability to do that show and probably your performer ability in general. And I think that's a great thing to come out. I to go along with Joyful, I would almost go in expecting to lose like all of your money. Let's set it at zero because I mean it's just not a fringe. You should not do this festival if you're going to try to make money. It's just like it's just not set up. The business models are very, very tough, especially for the venue sizes that people like us, most people on this call will be in. I don't know what Michael's experience has been in, but like when I've produced shows in like 40-seat theaters, coming from America, having to pay air flights and um, accommodations, it's almost like mathematically impossible in some venues to profit, like even with a one-person show with no expenses.
that's absolutely true. I mean, that's just unfortunately the way it is. And by the way, the 40-seat theater isn't that much cheaper. I mean, it's a little cheaper certainly than a 60-seat theater, let's say, but all the other expenses are the same, whether you're in 40 seats or 140 seats. And so that's the problem with that too. But you want a reasonably sized venue, and smaller, is better to make it look packed and stuff. I mean, there's that theory, which I adhere to, that I'd rather sell out 30 seats than be in a 100-seat theater with 70 seats empty. I just think it creates the buzz and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's hard to make money unless you're in if you're Jason Byrne in Assembly Hall, playing to 1,000 people a night at 40 pounds. Yeah, I guess you can make money. But most of us, that shouldn't be the goal, and it's certainly not the result.
I think the flyering is a pretty cost-effective way. Even like hiring flyers is not that expensive in the grand scheme of things. Um, in terms of other marketing costs, I mean, a big black hole for me last year was digital marketing on Facebook because I did see a correlation between if I targeted some ads correctly, I did see like, oh, it seems like people were aware of the show from it. But then it's this thing where you're like, I felt like as you go through the month, every show that passes, you're like, okay, we have 87-seat venue. We sold 40 seats. That's 47 seats that I'm not going to be able to sell. And like you keep falling behind more and more in terms of like chasing an audience. And so the digital marketing can be effective, but it's also like this endless, like you could spend $30,000 on Facebook marketing if you want. Like there's literally it's an infinite hole of money you could put it in. So it might be smart, specifically for me, to like set some reasonable limits in terms of how much of that you're going to chase. And some of that also depends on like tuning your advertising so that it's hitting the specific like demographics that you want to hit for your show. I think some of the marketing is also stuff you need to do on your side, which is like, who are the specific kind of people I want to come see my show? And then to me, some of like, I might be overspending on posters or whatever, but like, well, the one thing I don't want is someone at the end of the month to be like, oh, your show sounds great. I'd never heard about it. Like, that would break my heart.
I will say as far as like making money goes, I really like to think of it in terms of girl math, where you don't pay attention to the money you spend. Girl math is a meme for those unaware, but basically we like got our payout from the venue after Fringe, and I was like, oh my god, look, we made money on this, and my director's like, we lost so much more money than this. And I'm like, oh, we already spent that money doesn't exist anymore, we already spent it. Any money we get now, we have made money in my brain, and that feels good if you think of it.
I 1000% support this
Yeah.
because I had the exact same thing.
Me too.
One of my shows that I co-produced, we got the payout and I was like, oh, that was great. And she was like, if you look at this Excel sheet, I was like, I'm not going to look at the Excel sheet.
No, why would you do that?
I think it was Gary Gulman, stand-up comic, who said like, where when people say like, well, all the expenses, it really adds up. And he said, it only adds up if you add it up.
100%.
Joy,
So
something about flyering really quick, and then I want to jump into another category before we go to open Q&A. But I know
Oh yeah, there was somebody asked a question in the chat, and Twitter flyering. What is Twitter flyering? I think, I don't know if it's changed yet. Everyone seems to be hemming and hawing and being like, why is the main social media of the Fringe Twitter? But is it still? I don't know. It was last year, so, and it's been for years. So Twitter, if you don't have a Twitter account, I did a lot of Twitter flyering before, which is basically just putting your image up there and a little pithy like thing, like I was saying, blazing a fire through the taboo of abortion and baby making. Like I just had a couple little pithy lines, and I befriended as many people as I could, and I did it all the time. And there were definitely people when I got there, it was like, oh, I saw you on Twitter. Like there was some brand awareness before I got there because I hit that hard. So it just literally means going on there and putting your image and some pithy quotes. And I think there's one day, I forget, I blocked some things out because I have some PTSD, but there's like one day of the week where it's like everybody's doing it. I don't remember if that's Friday or Monday. I don't know if people remember, but I also want to hit something that Griffin keeps saying we, and I freaking love that because Griffin had a team with her. Griffin had like, and I think that is huge. Like I had producers, and I love you, Michael, but I didn't have like a partner in crime that could just like be in the weeds with me. Like I had a friend fly in from Prague one weekend, and the weekend she was there was amazing because she was just like, what do you need? Can I get you some food? Like just having a homie, like I would spend extra to bring a homie or a husband or a wife or a girlfriend or whatever you have, or like somebody else in the theater, like bring somebody who will like, stroke your hair, just like give you a pep talk, go run the stars somewhere. Like Michael did a great job. I highly recommend Michael. Fabulous. Like ticked all the boxes. I got all the reviews. Like I feel like I got my money's worth, and I think going with a producer your first year was genius. But like I say bring a hand holder. Bring bring somebody to like hold your hand. Like spend the money. Like I don't know, find it. Like bring the person.
you always need that person. It is so important to be able to have somebody else to be in the muck with you. Especially when it's so personal. They can help you maybe even bring yourself out of it. Because they're like, wow, that's really personal to you. Maybe it's not that big a deal. And you're like, maybe it's not that big a deal. Somebody to remind that it to you at all times is important. Let's talk for a second. We're gonna zoom out a little bit. Let's talk about like when you get there, like what are some things to expect going to another country. And I'd love to talk a little bit about how like tech is a little bit handled differently. And I know every venue has some differences, so don't say like this is how it works across the board. But I know that some people have gone there and been like, I had no thoughts about what would happen once I'm there. So we'll talk first about venues and like tech and like things that you should kind of check in on before you get there. And then we'll jump into some other on the ground kind of questions, and then get to questions at 8:15 for open Q&A. So yeah, venues, tech, when you get there, like that kind of stuff that what should you be thinking on now to make sure that you're prepared for August?
I will say, like tech day is super hectic for venues. Like our venue had all sorts of tech issues on the first day, and then it was great. But if you can bring your own tech person, that I would highly, highly recommend. Someone who like knows your show inside and out and is um ready to do it and is like just dedicated to your team. That's awesome. Like the venue tech people are great as well, but like bringing your own or bringing like a person who's doing tech for a couple of different shows, but yours is one of them, like that is I think invaluable.
Anyone else on tech before we move on?
I used the tech person at my venue. She was like 19 years old and doing a like fun thing for the summer. The also she was great. It was fine. Make sure your show works without tech, I think, no matter what. Because I mean, there was one day that the entire electrical grid went down, and so I didn't get to do my show. My audience was just standing outside. And then for the 2 days after that, there was a jackhammer outside the theater, jackhammering the electrical grid, I guess. But yeah, and I had a projector. Sometimes the projector screen was down, sometimes it wasn't. I don't know. It was just kind of like, know your show and to the best of your ability, make sure that you can do it no matter what. If you can bring a tech person, that's so cool for you. That was not an option for me. I didn't have a team, I didn't have a producer. But if I go again, Michael, with a show of my own, I'll be calling you.
It's awesome.
Yeah, it would be nice to have people there that also know what the hell is going on. And yeah, if you can bring a tech person, great. I mean, we're gonna have a team with us for Stacy's show this year, but they're leaving halfway through, and we have somebody coming on in Edinburgh that will be learning the show for a couple of days before they take over and finish out the run with her. And I feel like it's all, I don't know, just like theater. I don't know.
Is your tech a local person or somebody you're bringing?
So for the first like 2 weeks, we'll have our local tech that we're bringing with us, sorry, our California tech, and then they're leaving. And we have a local person that we've Stacy has found and hired, and they're going to come in and learn the show for like 2 days, 3 days, and then hopefully be able to,
I found my person, my UK person through Greenside Venue, sent out a ton of recommendations about people so I just interviewed a couple of them, and this woman is like, I think she works with Assembly. So I was like, all right. So I'm taking a leap of faith.
Yeah.
Good. Now, most of the techs, I mean, part of the problem, of course, and most of you, if not all of you, know this, the vast majority of venues aren't venues, right? They're classrooms or they're pubs, they're, halls. So during the rest of the year, they're not a proper theater. And so they're already behind the eight ball in terms of having the rigs proper and having the right, equipment, et cetera, et cetera. But, most of the major venues have this down to a science by now. They've been doing this a long time, and they do kit out the theaters sufficiently to do basic tech. I mean, if you have 1,000 light cues and 82 projection cues, it's gonna be challenging no matter where you are. But yeah, so the tech is your big chance to it's your tech rehearsal. Hello. Maybe you'll get a run in. I mean, a run through, probably not, because it's very limited in time. But all the venues will have long since scheduled your tech. Everyone on this call that's going this year will have already had a tech scheduled probably by now. I would hope so. First week of July. So you just show up that Tuesday morning or whenever it is. And the only other thing I will say is that the quality of the venue techs has gone down in the last couple of years. I hope, Chris, you have not experienced that at Assembly, but at Gilded, we have noticed a sort of a It's just harder to get good techs than it used to be post-pandemic for a number
Yeah,
of
I
reasons.
experienced that last year. So we had two people that would alternate, and one of them knew how to program the board, and one of them did not. Oh, look at me. Okay,
Happy
great.
birthday!
Um, my suggestion is right now, cut a third of your cues and cut two big set pieces that you think you're going to bring over. And hey, if you have time, you add those cues back in. You can always hire the person to come in for another tech 10 days in because it's running so smoothly that you feel like you can add more in. But most of the time, people are very ambitious about how much they think they can get in that tech. Um, especially, I mean, I've specifically known of people that go and sort of like expect the techs there to like help them design their shows in ways that are just not realistic. Especially because it's like a 19-year-old kid that's just taking this job for the summer and he barely knows what QLab is.
Let's talk really quickly. Let's do a day in the life of each of the five of you is going to give us a 1 minute. What does a typical day look for like for you when you were in Edinburgh? Middle of your run, like what was it looking like? What can people expect to kind of be their day to day? Go ahead, Griffin.
So day in the life of Two Cats on a Date, we would wake up, drink coffee, eat maybe a little bit of breakfast, walk to our first flyering location. With our stack of flyers that we'd allocated for the day based on like how many we had and how many days left in our run, we had a certain number of flyers to hand out every day. We'd go to our spot outside of Cowgate Underbelly, especially when we knew there would be big shows letting out. And we would hand out flyers for maybe an hour or two. Depending on if there was a show one of us wanted to see, me and my director, one of us would go see our show. The other would stay and flyer some more after the big shows would let out. We'd go get lunch, maybe see another show, flyer a little bit more. And then if it was one of the nights we sold out, we could stop flyering earlier and go rest a little bit outside of our venue. Usually around, our show was at 8:15, usually around 6:30, I would drink a Red Bull. Not too close to the show that I'd be like shaking during the show, but enough time to let it get in my system and like be energized, and then perform, talk to people after the show, maybe catch another show if we wanted, or go out with friends and commiserate about things, and then get home around probably like 11:30 midnight and go to bed.
Anyone else have a similar, different? What's the day in the life look like for you, Michael Blaha?
Well, it's a little different because I'm dealing with multiple shows. I mean, 12 this year, and they run from noon to 10:15, I think. So I obviously by mid-run, I will hopefully have seen all of them. And so I don't go every day to all 12 of them. I couldn't physically do that even if I wanted to. Um, I'm still practicing, I still have my practice. And so most of the days, especially mid-run, by the time the shows are up and running, I'm maybe sitting at the laptop more than I would like doing LA-based work. But in terms of Edinburgh experience, I try to go to the gym, not because I'm such a, gym rat, but I think for everybody's sake, you should take care of yourself. And I'll just go do some gym stuff, aerobics and weights, like couple times a week, maybe just to keep that going. Just take a walk in the meadows or something. It's good for your mental health as well as your physical health, of course. Yeah, so I'll go see shows that maybe one or two of ours, depending. If there's a reviewer in for one of ours, I'll try and go and bring a couple of extra people just to pack the audience a little bit on that particular day. Uh, like Griffin, if there's undoubtedly, I've already got a folder in my, Outlook saying shows to see in Edinburgh. So I'm going to obviously see friends shows and shows that just interest me. Dinner can be anything from, a quick there's so many food trucks, right? As you've seen, it might be some kind of food truck thing outside of assembly. And then I'm not really going out to the bars every night anymore. I did in the early days, but it's not a bad idea to go to the venue bars. Assembly's got one, Gilded's got one, Pleasant's got one. I mean, some of the bigger ones are so-called, private supposedly, but you can get a pass. That's not an issue really. You can just get a pass for them. But even some of the other just the friendly bar at the green side, or the friendly, the space is not a members bar, but it's a huge bar outside of the venue. And it's just a good way to interact with other artists and see people and meet friends and have a beer or not, as the case may be, whatever your tipple is. And then try and get a good night's sleep. I mean, back in the day, I partied pretty hard, but now I'm usually in bed by midnight. Not every night, but most times.
Chris, what about you?
So my show's at 140. So I have debated back and forth about like the value of flyering before the show. So I have somebody that's flyering sort of like one of the main walks towards the venue. But if I go out at like 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. flyering, at least near my venue, it's the end of a lot of like kids shows. So it's not necessarily the people I want to get into my show. So what I'll tend to do is do my show at 140 and then flyer afterwards for the next day. So I'll flyer a bit, and then I have a show at 5 o'clock, and then I have a show at 8 o'clock. So I do another show called Chamilton and one called Baby Wants Candy. So I'll typically have 3 shows in the day. But the main reason I do these other shows in the whole month is to promote my solo show. So like, people ask me to like go do 10 minutes on this, what's it called? Like mixed bill shows or whatever, or like my venue assembly will sometimes have like a little showcase and you do a little excerpt from your show. And I say yes to all those things. I say yes to everybody's podcast that they want to do. Anything that I can, like, if they want me to go do an improv show at Monkey Barrel, I'll go do it just so I can hand out flyers after the show. So there's like 5 days in the middle of this month where I'm doing a 140, a 5, an 8, and a 10:55 show, and that's 5 days in the middle. But and then I'll try to hand out flyers in there, and it's all for like the next day. So half the time you're handing out a flyer to someone that's like, "Oh, we're leaving now." But that's just the way it is. So I don't drink really much, and I don't party much, and everything in my group, that my whole improv group, whenever they're like, "Oh, we're gonna go climb Arthur's Seat and watch the sunrise," I'm like, I'm not doing that. Last year, I wanted to see Julia Masley's show, Stamp Town. Every show that I wanted to see started at 12:30 a.m. And I was like, I'm not seeing any of these shows. I will never see a show that starts at 1 in the morning. I will sleep in till like 11:30 and get some rest.
Anybody else with a day in the life? Katie Rose.
I'd say that usually I'd wake up and go on Twitter. That was always the first place that I would be. And I'm not a Twitter person. I wasn't before, but I found that that's the social media of the Fringe. And so you go on there, you follow a couple hashtags, and people are saying, "Hey, I'm coming for the weekend. What should I be seeing?" And they always hashtag like Ed Fringe or whatever the different hashtags are that you follow, and then just sending out personal ones, and then sending emails, follow-up emails to any press that you still want to come. So like that's first while you're drinking your tea or coffee and having breakfast. And then usually I would try to see at least one show. My show at the time was at like 4:30 or something like that. So I would try to see at least one, sometimes 2 shows before, and then I would always flyer before my show and on the way to the show all the time, because I'd be like, just follow me, you can come to the show. But I mean, I think maybe that was insane, but I didn't know. So I would just be in character and flyer for however long until I got to the theater and I had my 15 minutes in order. Then I would do the show afterwards. Almost, unless there was something I really, really was desperate to see, which did happen a few times, I just cut out right away and went to see another show. For the most part, after my show, I would say, I'm going to have a Guinness and a fish and chips and hang for a second. And then flyer NC shows, because I feel like being in other shows and saying, hey, what have you seen? And people love to tell you what they've seen. You know, so if you're in the audience for a show and you ask somebody sitting near you what they've seen, what they've enjoyed, then you go, oh, well, and after you listen so intently, and then you say, well, great, you should come to mine. And anyone else that was kind of an earshot, because people will kind of all kind of want to join in on that. So marketing is happening 24/7. But yes, hiking Arthur's Seat and going to the meadows. And you know what? Today I'm going to go see the tattoo, which is mind blowing. You know, whatever, do a Scotch tasting after your show. Make sure you do that stuff. It's really important to like be a human being. So I highly recommend that part.
Joyful, do you have a last day in the life?
You know, some of it's really similar to other people, so I'll just add a couple little things, which is that I stayed in Leith, which is like a 15-minute bus ride from downtown, which was a really lovely neighborhood, and going back there every night to like a normal neighborhood where like the Fringe hub and buzz was not there was really refreshing. It did kick me in the ass the first day. As Michael knows, I was late to my own show for my first show because I didn't know how long the bus took. So I highly recommend, if you're challenged spatially like I am, to map out your route like a couple times, and it's going to be different once the Fringe starts because the buses get stuck behind people. They're not the same. So map that shit out, excuse my language. And maps, like I'm really challenged. A woman I met last year, Charlotte, I'll put it in the post. She made a neurodivergent map of the Fringe. I highly recommend, like, for those of you who are bad at directions, like take a day to like stomp the grounds, because maps in Edinburgh are weird. It's like turn left, but it's really like down 5 flights of, someone said to me, it's 3D. Maybe it was Michael who said that to me. It's 3D. It's not linear. So like it says go left, but really it means like go around the corner and up like an ancient set of stairs. That's, you know, so like map it out. I got lost so many times. So I spent a lot of my days lost, but I was in Leith, and then I would get a coffee. They knew me at the coffee shop. I had a 2:20 show, you know, so I wouldn't do anything before my show because I'm a night owl. And then I just like Katie Rose said, I would just flyer all the time. I had my flyers like in my pants, in my stomach. And I just, anytime I met somebody, and like Katie said, it might not have been the best for my mental health because I just, I'm a chatty person. So I would just meet people, but those were like the best way to get people in the, and then I spent a lot of my day mapping out which other shows I wanted to see. And I didn't do enough mental health stuff. So I would say take walks, get away from the Fringe, take some time away. Don't do as I did. And then I was on a bunch of threads, and I don't know if this was good for my mental health, but it was really good for support. I was on, like, if y'all make a group thread, like everybody from LA who's going, and the days I had reviewers, you know, we couldn't always make it to everybody else's, but we'd put out SOSs like, I have a reviewer, come through, I have free tickets. And it did really help. Like, so I just spent a lot of time on doing that. And get a massage. There's a Thai massage place down, I forget, I actually like just moved and I threw out the flyer, but there's some cheap or affordable massage. And then I would, go to the big beer gardens. I concur with what Chris said, like where people are eating and like drinking and carousing. I would like sidle up to tables and just be like, hey, you know. So and I don't drink either, which would have been helpful for flyering. So pretty similar to what other people said. I just wanted to add those few things in.
I love it. I'm in your shoes now. I can imagine all of your days, and I love how different they are because it really speaks to how different it's going to be based on who you are. Your success is going to look so much like your success and not somebody else's, you know, and you have to really decide what are those things that you want to do. We say it all the time at Hollywood Fringe. What are those self-care things that are non-negotiables? Your workouts, your Red Bull that you time perfectly to make sure that it hits at the right time. or sometimes it's not drinking. And I think that all of those things are just going to be so personal to you, and to figure out what that's going to look like for your habits that are already in your daily life is going to be so important. We're going to throw a couple of things into the chat to be answered, and then I'm going to download this chat and throw it into the a message to every person who reserved a ticket tonight. So that chat will be downloaded and emailed to you all. But I'm because I see here that somebody wants to make a quick little list of people, of shows and things like that. So feel free to throw that in the chat in response. If you hover over any message, you can respond to it when it says quote, there's like a more, and then you can put quote, and you can respond right inside there. And then also I'm going to throw 2 more things to respond to in the chat, which is going to be a thread about where to grocery shop and have a cheap meal. And another, which is what are spaces that are worth going to for a pint or a soda water to network. Just some spaces for people who are going for the first time to kind of know about. So if we can respond with those things in the chat, as well as your information if you want to share it. And the last thing I'm going to share is that we do have a Hollywood Fringe to Edinburgh chat. And it's available for anybody to join who's going to Edinburgh Fringe this year. And we did one last year, and we will do one again next year. And it's not the end all be all thread. Let me tell you, you probably need to be on like 7 to 8 different threads. And hopefully making friends at some of these networking events, you'll be able to find out where those spaces are going to be for this year, because they change every year. But I'm going to grab that link to our Edinburgh chat. And in the meantime, I see that Joe Coffey asked a question. Joe, do you want to actually ask it out loud? And what I'm going to do is for anybody who has a question from now on, you're just going to raise your hand. You're going to unmute when we tell you to, and you're just going to ask your question, but also introduce us to you and your show if you're bringing one to the Fringe this year. So Joe, I'm going to add you right now.
Great. Thank you so much. Sorry I'm jumping on here late, but it's awesome to see everyone's faces and recognizing some people. So my question was specifically dealing with flyers. I'm in the midst of formatting the flyers that I want for Edinburgh Fringe, and my venue is having me put their logo on the flyers, and that's like mandatory and everything. On average, what's a good amount to leave the house with?
Anyone jump in.
I
really,
think,
go ahead.
no, you go.
No, it's just, it really depends. I mean, I know that's not a particularly helpful answer, but how long you're going to be doing it? I mean, you really won't know the answer to that until you've done it for a few days and you have a sort of an idea. But a couple of hundred, maybe. I mean, you might find that you give out 200 in an hour. That's unlikely, but it's certainly possible, depending if you found a real hot spot for people to take your flyer. But yeah, I think Joyful made the point earlier about connecting with people individually, and so I'd rather give out 25 flyers and have a personal conversation with those 25 people than just give out hundreds randomly. So that's going to be you're gonna get the rhythm, but yeah, a couple hundred. You're doing it yourself. I take it you're not talking about a flyering team going out there. You're talking about how many should Joe take out in the morning.
Yeah, just myself. Yeah. So just sorry, I probably should have prefaced with I'm doing 5 shows. I'm there from like August 1st to August 11th, and I'm show, day off, show, day off, show, day off. So on those days off, especially, I'm definitely going to be hustling with the flyers.
Yeah, then you may be taking out more than 200. I don't know what venue are you in?
Greenside.
Which one? The one over on Infirmary? No,
it's on George Street.
oh, the new one on George Street. Okay, well that's a really nice location because the Assembly's got a big venue right down the road from you on George Street. Yeah, I mean, just if you're going to be flyering all day, you're probably going to need more than a couple hundred, I suppose. But just you could just sort of do a mental calculation if you were just giving out 10 per minute. That would be 600 an hour. I don't think you'd be giving out 10 a minute. It's more like you'd be giving out 20 an hour, let's say, or 50 an hour at tops. Again, if you're making connections with people instead of just dealing them out on the street, I suppose.
Sure. Great, thank you.
Anyone else with a question? Raise your hand. Oh, Julia, I'm going to add you, okay?
Hi. Thanks for all these insightful answers. So I am going to Fringe for the first time this year, but I'm not performing this year. I'm intending to like bring my show there next year. So I'm wondering, for someone going for the first time who doesn't have a show there, like what would you say is the best way to start understanding like the landscape, or even just in general, like what are some tips in things to like understand Fringe as a whole, besides like seeing shows, obviously, and walking around and figuring out where I'm going and all of that. And also, I have another question too. Like, are there places, because I'm guessing like the entire city is kind of a network, it's just networking everywhere, but is there anywhere in particular or certain places that kind of you think would be a good place for networking ahead of coming there a year later?
I would say, to answer your first question, oh my God, I had it and now it's gone. What was the first part of your question?
Just like what to do for the first
Yes.
time to understand. Yeah.
I would say look for shows that are similar to yours and kind of see what they're doing, and then, make mental notes of what you like about what they're doing and what you don't, and what you would do differently. And then like check out as many venue spaces as possible. Like get a feel for all of the places your show could be and why you would want it in certain places, and that'll help you in your applications to say why specifically you're reaching out to each venue. And that'll show that, like, I don't know, you've been thoughtful about what you want for your show, and you'll be more likely to get the spaces you want. And then for your second question, where to go for networking, I would avoid the like tourist heavy spots. Like, I think a lesson people learned pretty quickly, myself included, was not to stay too much on the Royal Mile. That's just glutted with tourists who are there to see the city and not necessarily the Fringe, but instead go to, a lot of venues have bars or cafes or like food spaces, what have you. Go to those places because that's where the Fringe people are congregating. That's where we would go after our shows. Zoo didn't have like Zoo Playground didn't have a big like communal space, but their South Side venue had a like cabaret bar, and they would host a lot of events there, and that's where all the artists would go and hang out. And then Assembly, George Square has a big like, I don't know, it felt like a carnival almost, of just like artists and food and stuff, and like that's a great place. And Pleasance Courtyard as well, Underbelly, bars and everything. Yeah.
Julia, did you say how long you're staying there? This
For like a week, a full week.
Okay. My suggestion was going to be also similar, which was that go see a lot of shows, and then you will see the vibe that certain venues have. And that might be the venue that is the best one for you to apply to as your like first choice or whatever. I also wanted to add on to similar idea of like finding shows that are similar, not similar, but like compatible with yours. Is that's also a good place to flyer those like specifically look for shows where it's like, oh, if you like that show, you'll like this show, and then go flyer that one. And if you can, go see the show early in the month, hang out afterwards, talk to the people, and see if you can get them to mention your show at the end of their show, and sort of trade like that. That's a very common thing, to give a Fringe speech at the end and say like, thanks for coming, and if you like this show, check out such and such. Also, I don't know how many people do this, but like it's pretty common when you perform a show to like hang out and meet your audience afterwards. Um, and I think it's important. I know a lot of times we would skip that because we'd be like, okay, I did my job or whatever, but that connection to try to get them to have the word of mouth to go forward is important there.
Thank you.
It also feels good. Like the people who stay back are the ones who really loved your show, and they're going to tell you that, and that's going to really uplift you.
Anybody else have a question in the chat, my friends? Raise your hand. I'd love to spotlight you. Otherwise, I have a list of them. gonna bring out my list and then think on them, but we'll probably end about 8:45, let everybody get home on the sleepy night and rest instead. One of my Calliope, I'll go with you first really quickly. I'm going to boom, let you unmute. I can't highlight you because your video is not on though.
Hello, my name is Calliope. I am the director and producer of The Kids Might Die, A Tale Told by an Idiot. And we're going to be at Greenside as well, so it's really nice to see some other Greenside people. So my question was, as a director and producer who is not performing, but who will be at every single solitary show, like as a team member, what is something that you as artists wish that you had your team member do for you, like on a daily basis? Is it as simple as like, just make sure, like, can I get them a coffee every morning? Or is it more in depth where it's like, I would really love somebody to take over this one job so that I don't have to worry about it? Like, what was the one thing that you wish you could have just taken off your hands?
Katie Rose, you have opinions.
I mean, selling tickets is that's the main thing at all times. So I don't know what the answer is to that. That's why I was just kind of going like, I don't know. It feels like I feel bad because I feel like it's so I feel like we're giving a very honest review of what this experience is, which is like soul crushing and soul uplifting in the same moment. And I know that people kind of told me that before I went. I don't know, like, yeah, getting the tea for someone before their show will feel so nice. Like, that sounds great. I don't know what, everyone's going to be different, but I just know that like it's I'm excited for you and I'm nervous for you and it's going to be great. And luckily you're at Greenside and it seems like a bunch of us are going to be there. So that's wonderful. And it's so hard, even when you're on the periphery, you're not the performer and the star of the show. Like it's so hard. And you want to help. But that person feels so responsible for the purpose of being there, if you have a team with you of some kind. And Stacy, you don't feel responsible for me, okay? But
I am always responsible for you, Katie Rose.
Anyway, I didn't answer the question, but I got called on because I was making a face, I'm sure. I'm sorry. Sometimes I can't help myself. So maybe somebody else has a better.
Yeah, I'll try and answer at that, which is real simple. I mean, definitely, like if they can go hand out flyers for you so that you can skip a flyering shift, that's great. I just thought of this, which is have them take their phone and go talk to the people leaving your show and get on video a bunch of people saying what they like about your show. And then tell them every day after the show, you have to come back and tell me 2 compliments that the audience told you about the show. And if they didn't get 2, they have to make them up. Because if they're the ones supporting you, there's going to be an element of you needing to have a cheerleader. I'd say at least 6 times in the month. There's going to be a day where you just want someone to like not give you notes on the show, just to tell you how, you only sold 11 tickets, but those 11 people came out talking about how great it was. Yeah, that's what I would have them do.
This is like a super practical one. I agree with everything that everyone has said. I would watch everyone in my venue, like we would all ride these waves and it would be like, oh, we got a good review up, and then it'd be like, oh, crash. Someone's crying. Who's crying today? Okay, they're back up. It was just like these waves. And somebody gave me really good advice there. Like each week of the Fringe is like a new week. There's 4 weeks. Each week is like a new week. That was great advice. Something I really wanted people to do, I don't know if anybody's like the star thing, like Chris kind of mentioned it, but I was not prepared for this. Like when you get a review and you get stars that you want to share, so they're above 3, you want to share them, then you want your poster starts to look naked, and the comparison can get really insane when you're like, no stars on my poster. So I really was into like putting stars up on my poster, and like I had great producers and they did a lot of that, but it was something I wanted. Like I was like, oh my God, I got stars, I need those stars on those posters today now. And I got really impatient. So I had a friend who was like, when my friend was there, she's like, I saw a poster that was like over blah 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 and it was naked. So like having your friend just have your stars and your little quote with them, and so if they see a naked poster, like I don't know, that's just a random thing that I wanted, but be prepared for the star thing. It took me off guard. I was not prepared for that. I was like, wait, where are these stars coming from? Why does everybody have stars on their flyers? Like it's comparison town. So like, just be prepared for that.
Any other advice for what a person who's there to in that supporting role that like might be producer or part of the team that's not on stage every day? Any other advice there for that person?
Yes, help them eat healthy. The food options, the easy food options that like you're gonna grab when you're like tired and hungry and running from one place to the next, are all like fried meats and breads, and they're so delicious. But my director would sometimes bring out just a Tupperware of like carrot sticks and was like, eat all of these right now. And I'd be like, okay, fine. Like I really felt like a child, but it was helpful to eat healthy and have regular bowel movements for those 4 weeks.
Don't forget to pack your US meds if you're one to get sick. Don't forget to pack the things that make you feel better. Because as a tourist, my stomach cannot handle the food in Scotland. I have a really sensitive stomach. That's why I was born and raised here in Southern California. I don't know anything except for like vegetarian and like light food, and Scotland is not it. I think that my key word when I'm in Scotland is I will eat anything if there's a vegetable. It is a part of how I plan my day. Anyways, I would like to wrap up, but could I just really quickly with all of our panelists do one rapid fire thing that you wish you had known in your first time going to Edinburgh Fringe, or even like a mistake that you had made that you hope that nobody makes in the way that you did? Just to wrap up, and then we'll have a nice night, and we'll see you all at the bar on Wednesday, the 22nd. I'm gonna look at the calendar. It's Wednesday, the 17th. From 7 to 9, the Broadwater Plunge is our next event. Come talk to people in person, see who's going to Edinburgh this year. Come be merry.
Yeah, I can start with the first time I went there, I thought we were gonna make money because the show won a Fringe first and it was 5-star reviews. We still lost money. Second year, we won a Best Actor award, sold out like every show, still lost money. So I basically wish I had known before I ever went that that's Edinburgh. That's like in tribute to Robert Towne's recent passing. That's Edinburgh, Jake. You just got to get over it because it was kind of soul deadening in a way to do so well critically and still lose money. And so that's again, I hate to leave on a negative note. That's certainly not my intention, but I wish I had known sooner that there are all these other benefits and good things that come out of it. And I wouldn't have been so bummed out the first year or two. And then since then, I now understand that there's successes, all kinds of successes that don't necessarily have to do with whether you recouped your investment. And the good news is a lot of people crowdfund, and so it's not even their money, to lose. Granted, I understand you don't want to lose money even for your friends that donated, but it's sometimes not as it's certainly not as traumatic if it's not your IRA that you cashed in to go. But that's the main lesson I wished I had known or learned early on, is that it's not about making money. That's really not the focus that Edinburgh should be for any.
Anyone else?
I'll just say that yes, it's very unlikely you'll make money. However, just to turn that slightly positive, that like last year I didn't make money. Like I sold 93% of my tickets last year and I didn't make money. But I got booked at like 4 or 5 theaters this year. I'm touring my show from last year through July of next year, and I got to film it for a special that's coming out later this month. So like I've made money overall from it. Um, and to go along with that, I will say that the thing I wish I knew from last year when I did my first solo show, which I mean, I'll just tell myself again the same lesson this year. I think it's gonna be hard to learn, but like my run last year went about as well as it could go. Um, I far surpassed the goals I set at the beginning of the month. That I got a 4-star review from the Guardian, blah blah, and then the publicist was like, "Oh, you might be under consideration for the comedy award." And so then all of my expectations were thrown out the window. And now the month was a complete failure if I wasn't nominated for the comedy award. And they sent a judge for the comedy award to the show. And because you get like a little notice that like a press comp has been set aside and who it's for. And then I did the show and it went really well. And I'm like checking with her. And then like 3 days later, they're announcing the nominees for the award. And I'm like, have you heard anything? And she's like, well, if we haven't heard by now, you're probably not nominated. And then we find out later that the judge was sick, didn't come see the show. They didn't send another one. I was never under consideration. And so it was this lesson of just like, you can keep comparing yourself even when you tell yourself you've hit the thing, the reasonable expectation you made. But it's just this thing that it's really an exercise in like how self like just by your own standards can you live. That was a huge challenge for me. And now my challenge this year is great. My show did great last year. This year's show is definitely going to be disappointing compared to last year's. It's always like it's something else. The thing I will say that I did want to say before the everybody that's listening is there's a lot of stuff we've talked about that I think it's either too late or you have to get on it right now if you haven't set up posters, flyers, accommodation. I can't imagine you haven't set up accommodation and you're going this year. But there's one thing that is not too late for you to do, which is everybody bringing a show to Fringe has at least one moment in their show that isn't working, that your director has told you that like it doesn't hit with the audience the way you think it is. And it's that moment where the director gives you the note for the 4th time and they're like, this is still not working. And you go to explain why it needs to be in the show. Well, it sets up this thing. And if you just understand why I'm doing it, then you should get it. And it's like that moment needs to be cut. And you can do that for free. And you've got at least one of them in your show right now. There's no point in going into the lab of doing the 26 shows if you don't use it to develop. So if you want to just stay hard-headed about your show through the whole month and not grow from the luxury of having 26 audiences, but if you really take into account, like, is this moment really necessary? Can I adjust this or that? Like really use it as a lab. Like that's what I would encourage you to do.
Oops, I
Anything?
didn't realize I was already unmuted. I'm so sorry. I was laughing really hard there. Sorry about that. I guess I'll go since I'm unmuted. I totally agree with everything Chris just said. Like, use it as a lab. I wish that I had known, and I think there's no way for, like he said, there's a lesson. I'm going to keep learning it. This is our work as artists in showbiz. Showbiz and art they need each other, but they're two separate things. So keep your art and your heart aligned. Do whatever you need to do to your spiritual work, whatever you do, meditate, go walk on the beach, like Michael said, like do whatever you need to do to stay in alignment with yourself. Do that, because the showbiz, if you get too, showbiz is brutal. So just like remember that we're all in this together. Someone called it the random brutality of the Fringe. Like, so I just, this one woman I was, so just take care of yourself. That's the one thing I would say. Just take care of yourself so you can keep doing your show. And then one thing I wish I'd known, but it's kind of silly to say that because I learned the lessons I needed to learn. But, you're in a different country. The comedy is different. people laugh at different things. And there were a couple jokes that I stubbornly clung to. I was like, it's not getting a laugh, but I'm still gonna try to make it work. And I wish I just like changed those jokes up, tried some new things. And I did to some degree, but certain things are gonna fall dead there that were super alive here, and vice versa. You're gonna have new jokes that you never thought were funny because the audience, the Scots, and they're not as boisterous as Americans. They're a little quieter, and the audiences are tired because they're seeing a lot of shows. So just like, roll with the punches, stay. And one last thing I really wish I'd known is that the festival is really like, there's more comedy than there is theater. It's kind of a comedy festival with theater, in my opinion. That's how I felt. So like, just be prepared for that. There's a lot of comedy focus, comedy awards. So don't feel like the underdog if you're not doing comedy, if you're doing more of theater, because it's a lot of comedy emphasis. So, and like Katie said, just like, you're gonna have so much fun and you're gonna learn a lot. So it's a spiritual journey, y'all. Just go on that journey.
One one thing that I think is good to know is that Phoebe Waller-Bridge is going to be there, and she is not going to see your show. You're gonna hear about her. She's like Bigfoot. Someone's like, I saw her, I flyered to her, I handed her a flyer. And then you're gonna see her on Instagram. You're like, oh, she went to go see that show. She's not gonna see yours. Just let that go. Then I would also say the month goes quicker than you think. It like can sometimes feel like it's really long in the middle of it or on certain parts of certain days, but it goes really fast. And like, make it a priority to see the things you really want to see, even if it's just parts of the city you really want to see. Like, it's a beautiful European city. Really enjoy it, and enjoy the parts of it that aren't Fringe if you can. And the last thing I'll say is that just remember what a privilege it is to be there, like especially on days where you're having a hard time. I just remember like being backstage before the show started and just reminding myself, like, I'm so lucky to be doing this and to be doing a show that I love in a city I love, in a really amazing festival. Just keep that in mind, because it's a really special experience.
I love closing out on that. That's beautiful, beautiful. Chris, I will let you say something.
Sorry, I had two more things to say, which is to add, which is there is a thing about self-care and rest and stuff like that, but I have seen many people go to Fringe for the first time, and they do their show, and then it's like 6 p.m. after the show, and it's like, hey, I just heard about this great show. Do you want to go see it? And they're like, no, I'll go see it tomorrow. And I have seen a lot of people go through like 3 weeks of the festival not seeing much other stuff. And I think you should. Like, I think it's so valuable to see other stuff. And my last tip is, every time you feel socially obligated to see somebody's show because they came to see your show, and you go, oh, I'll definitely come see yours, go see those shows as early as you can, get them out of the way. The most depressing thing is your last 3 days are filled with social obligation attendance, where you go see these shows that are, some of them are awful, and your last couple days at Fringe, you're just kicking off like, I have to go see this person's show, blah, blah. Knock those out as soon as you can.
The practical ending that we all needed, because we all needed to be reminded of that at any Fringe.
And I have something I want to say too.
Yeah.
This is a very strange thing, but I have to tell you, I was there. It was happening every day. Every day feels like a month. And I kept trying to figure out how to articulate how hard this experience was, or, was while it was happening. And I was brushing my teeth one day, and I was thinking about how I could come back next year and do it again. And I feel like that, for me, somebody was asking me about it, and I said, because I think when I'm in LA and I'm being an artist and pursuing my career, I'm also doing all the other parts of my life, of course, paying my bills and walking dogs and have a husband and all, you know, all the things, and going to friends' birthdays and this and that. And when you're there, you're working so hard for this one singular thing, and it's only for you. It's for your artist and your like inner joy and soul. And so I think even though it's so grueling at times, the thing I wish I had known, that I figured out, thankfully, by the end there, was that it's all in service of my own joy. And so that would be the piece that I would give myself. I've been very I feel like we've kind of spoken about that, like when it came to do the show, to stand backstage and say, well, what a privilege I get to be here and take that moment. And the people have come, that you did get to come in, whether it's 4 people, they're the people that were supposed to see your show today, and you fucking give them that show. Sorry, I don't know if I'm allowed to say that, but you know, you lay it all out there, and it's so it's such a rewarding experience. And at the end of it all, you come back here and it's like, wow, I had to go all the way across the world for my own city to see who I am, or for me to see who I am, and my show to develop this much. And I will say, once I got back, I had no problem making an elevator pitch to anyone ever about anything. So yeah, that would be my one thing that I would say. Go in knowing it's going to be so hard, but it's ultimately, it's for you.
100%. Thank you all so much. We're gonna take off, let everybody go to bed, feeling excited to take on next month. We'll see you soon. Yeah, enjoy your night, everyone. Bye.